Senator from Arizona.
The proceedings on the quorum call be suspended, that Senator Lieberman and I and the senator from South Carolina, Senator Graham, if he ever shows up, be allowed to engage in colloquy.
Without objection.
I thank you, Madam President. I join my friend Senator Lieberman again on the floor on the issue that has, in my view, transcended consequences, not just for the people who are being massacred in Libya, but also for a definition of what the United States of America is all about. Yesterday's attack in Syria killed some key leaders of the Assad regime, including one of its notorious and brutal henchmen. It's a sign of victory and progress for the Syrian opposition, and hopefully it could be a sign that Assad is losing his hold on power. But it's hardly time to celebrate or claim credit. I see in the various organs of the administration, like the New York Times, well, now the administration's hands-off policy has been successful. 17,000 Syrians have been massacred while this administration has done nothing, and the President of the United States has refused to even speak up. The President of the United States talks about Bain capital all the time. Why doesn't he talk about the capital of Syria, where thousands of innocent people have been tortured, raped, and murdered? So, Assad will fall, as the senator from Connecticut and I have said time and time again. But how many more will die before the United States of America first speaks up for them, second provides them, helps with other countries, provide them with arms and ability to defend themselves, and a sanctuary, a no-fly, no-drive sanctuary, and working with other countries in the region, accelerate the departure of Bashar Assad. I'd like to make another point before I ask my friend from Connecticut. It seems now that the United States national security rests not with the decisions that should be made here in the halls of Congress and at the White House, that the decisions concerning what actions the United States of America may take is now dictated by Russia and China in the United Nations. How many times have we heard the administration say, well, we'd like to do more, we'd like to have more happen, but Russia vetoes the United Nations Security Council? Does that mean that when these people are being massacred, cry out for our help and our moral support, that because Russia vetoes a resolution, as they did today again, supported by China, a resolution in the United Nations Security Council, therefore we can do nothing? Former President Clinton went to Kosovo without a United Nations Security Council resolution because he knew that the Russians would veto any resolution concerning Kosovo, and he went and we saved Muslims' lives. So the administration continues to assume that what they call a Yemen solution is possible in Syria. They believe that with Russia backing, we can compel Assad and his top lieutenants to leave power, and the apparatus of the Syrian state will continue to function under new management. I wish this could be so. And let me also point out, and I'd ask my friend from Connecticut, isn't it true that the predictions that the longer that this conflict lasts, the more likely it is that extremists come in and take over this revolution which began peacefully? Isn't it true that our concern about weapons of mass destruction and its stockpile become more valid every day this goes on? Isn't it a valid assumption that Bashar Assad in his desperation may use these weapons against his own people, and the whole stockpile of those weapons become more and more tenuous by the day? Isn't it true that the likelihood of further chaos, further inability to put that country and its people back together after this conflict is over, and as we agree, Bashar Assad will leave. But isn't it true that every day that goes by that he remains in power, the situation becomes worse in all respects as far as American national security interests are concerned, whether it be weapons of mass destruction, whether it be Islamic extremists taking over that country, and by the way, including continued Iranian presence in Syria, propping up Hezbollah in Lebanon, and all of the ramifications of their continued presence there. So I would ask my friend finally, doesn't this cry out, rather than saying, well, what happened yesterday that was good and it shows Bashar Assad is on his way out, doesn't this indicate that it's now even more in our interest to accelerate his departure, not with American boots on the ground, but through moral support, physical support, logistic support, and working with our allies?
Madam President, I say to my friend from Arizona, of course I agree with you. The reality is that premature judgments about the victory of the Syrian freedom fighters over the dictator Assad are exactly that. They're premature. The murder, assassination, the elimination of these critical leaders of this dictatorial government yesterday by the Syrian opposition was a very significant development, and apparently the fighting continues in Damascus in a way that may bring exactly what my friend from Arizona says, more chaos in Damascus, the capital city. But this fight's not over. This regime has a devastating inventory of weapons, including weapons of mass destruction. And as Senator from Arizona said, Bashar Assad's father used those weapons, in this case chemical weapons, that case chemical weapons, against his own people decades ago, killing thousands of them on a single day. No, this fight's not over, and the danger is that, as you said, it does get worse the more it goes on without the involvement of the civilized nations of the world who have to be led by the United States of America. I want to put in juxtaposition these two significant events of the last 24 hours that my friend from Arizona has described. One is the suicide bombing, apparently, or death of these leaders of the Assad government. The second is the vote in New York at the United Nations today. And this, after months in which too much of the civilized world has been pleading with Russia and depending on Russia to change its mind and come in and get Bashar Assad out of there, this veto today shows that they're just not going to do it. And I'm going to yield in a moment because I note the presence of the majority leader. Just to finish this thought, the reality is now that the fig leaf has been taken off the Annan plan, which since it went into effect and since it allegedly brought a ceasefire to Syria, thousands more Syrians have been killed. The reality is that Russia will not join in trying to stop the slaughter in Syria, that the slaughter will only be stopped by facts on the ground, and those facts are military, and it will not get better until the United States leads a coalition of the willing to support the opposition and bring about the early end of this horrific regime that now rules Syria. With that, I yield the floor to the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I appreciate my friend yielding.
Majority Leader.
There will be no further roll call votes today. Next vote will be Monday at 5:30 p.m. in relation to the nomination of Michael Shipp to be a United States District Judge for the District of New Jersey.
Madam President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Madam President,
I'm sorry, the Senator from Arizona.
I thank this distinguished majority leader, and I again urge him, however possible, to bring up the defense authorization bill, which I hope we could do sooner rather than later, as we have done for the last 50 years. And I thank the majority leader.
Madam President, if I could just respond to my friend. I had a long conversation yesterday with the chairman of the committee who we're working with, his ranking member, Senator McCain, and I understand the importance of the legislation, and we're working on, I know that Senator McCain's working on that to try to narrow the focus of what we will do when we get on that bill. We will get on it. It's only a question of when.
I thank the majority leader. I would just like to mention to my friend from Connecticut, as we continue this colloquy, there's another aspect of this I would appreciate your comments on. We all agree that Bashar Assad will go. We know that. Now, the question is how many die, how many wounded, how many killed, what happens to weapons of mass destruction. I think we have established, the longer it goes on, the more those threats increase and the more dangerous the situation becomes and the harder it will be to resolve once Assad leaves. But also, I would ask my friend from Connecticut, how will the Syrian people feel about the United States of America if we continue to sit by and really provide them not even moral assistance, much less the physical and logistics assistance that you and I just discussed is as necessary? Senator Lieberman and I have been to Libya on numerous occasions. I was there at an exhilarating moment at the time of their elections, and I can tell you firsthand from seeing a couple 100,000 people celebrating, they are grateful to the United States of America for what we did. I wonder what the attitude of the new people who will emerge as leaders of Syria, whoever they are, what will their attitude be to the United States of America, I would ask my colleague. And taking into consideration that the challenges that whoever takes over power in Libya will face are myriad. They are really incredible obstacles in a path to a free and democratic nation. And that would cry out for American assistance and help. How willing and how eager will they have for the United States to be engaged in any way in assisting them as they try to achieve the goal that they've already sacrificed 17,000 lives for?
Well, I say to my friend from Arizona that he makes a very important point here. Let me relate it back to one of the excuses that's been given for the United States not to have become more involved on the side of the opposition to Assad, which is the side of freedom, which is where our national values call us to be. One of the excuses for not getting involved is this argument: we don't know who's going to follow Assad. It could be Islamist extremists. Well, my reaction to that would be that the longer we sit back, the more likely it will be people who are not friendly to the United States, because in their hour of need, unlike the situation in Libya that the senators just described, we were not with them. You and I have been to Turkey together, and I made a trip to Lebanon. In each case, we've talked to the leaders. In one case in Turkey, we spoke to the leaders of the Syrian opposition, the Syrian National Council. We met with the heads of the Free Syrian Army. We met with individual refugees. My own judgment is that these people are not extremists or radicals. These are patriots. These are nationalists. These are people who want a better life than they were living under Assad. And now increasingly, they are people whose relatives or friends have been killed by Assad's military, and so they have a fury in them, an anger to that they didn't have before, because now they've been victims. But if we can I say that there are no Islamist extremists who are now fighting in Syria against Assad? I can't say that. And I think the longer we stand back and don't partner openly, strongly with the Syrian freedom fighters, the greater is the danger, one, that extremists will be what follows Assad, and two, even if we're lucky enough and it's not extremists, it'll be a leadership group that will not feel any particular sense of gratitude to the United States because we were not with them when they needed us.
Well, could I also point out that I wish, first of all, I understand, and I know my friend from Connecticut does, that the focus of the American people is on our economy, jobs, and the severe recession that we're in. But, you know, I'd say to my friend from Connecticut, I just wish that every American could have either been with us or have had seen on film a recording of our visit to a refugee camp in the Turkish-Syrian border. 25,000 refugees. I understand now that's up to 35 or 40,000 refugees from Syria. People who have been driven out of their homes, living not in squalid conditions, but certainly very crowded and unpleasant conditions, certainly not the same conditions which they enjoyed in Syria. I wish that the American people could have seen it when we met those young children who've been displaced from their homes, when we met the group of men who told us of watching their children being murdered in front of their eyes, of the young women who had been gang raped, of the defectors from the Syrian military who told us that that's their instructions. Their instructions are, in order to try to subdue the people, to torture, murder, rape. We know from human rights organizations that now there are torture centers set up around Syria by the Assad military, where people are taken and obviously tortured. The American people are the most generous people in the world. And the American people, where we can, will try to stop these kinds of atrocities and offenses to everything that we stand for and believe in. So I wish more Americans would know how terrible and dire this situation is for the average citizen, not just those who are demonstrating, but anybody who happens to be in one of these areas where the tanks roll in, the artillery starts firing, and the helicopter gunships start slaughtering people in the streets. And I hope that I'm not saying this in a partisan fashion, but I wish the President of the United States would speak up for these people. That's the job of the President of the United States, and that's to lead. And I wish we, here in Congress, would do more in order to try to help these people, because that is a long, long American tradition. And yes, it may require some financial sacrifice and maybe material sacrifice on the part of the American people, but I think the cause is one of transcendent importance. And I want to thank my friend from Connecticut for his compassion and his concern and his commitment to these people who live far away.
Madam President, I thank Senator McCain for his leadership here. This is one of those cases where we have the opportunity, and it's painful that we haven't taken it over these many, many months of the uprising in Syria. We have the opportunity not only to do what's right, but to do what's best for our country diplomatically. In other words, what's right is to be on the side of freedom, to be with the people fighting against a brutal dictator. That's the right thing to do. What's right is to enter this fight to stop the slaughter of innocent men, women, and literally children. But there also happens to be the strategic opportunity. I asked my friend from Arizona about this. Do you agree that Syria, Assad is not only the best friend, but really the only friend and ally that Iran has in the Middle East? Iran is our #1 strategic threat in the world today. #1 state sponsor of terrorism, headlong effort to build nuclear weapons that will totally change the peace of the world if they get them. So here we have an opportunity not only to do what's morally right, but to help overthrow the best friend of our worst enemy, Iran. And as you remember, we were there together. General Jim Mattis, a great American military leader, the head of the Central Command overseeing the Middle East, said that if Assad is overthrown, it will be the worst setback that Iran has suffered in more than a quarter of a century. And that will in turn, I think, open up tremendous new possibilities in Lebanon, which has been under the Syrian-Iranian influence, and even in Iraq, where the new Iraqi government has felt, I think, pressured on both sides from Iran and Iran's ally Syria on the other side. If Syria is not controlled by an Iranian puppet, I think we may see some more independence from Iraq that we'd like to see. So I ask Senator from Arizona if he agrees that there's not just a moral imperative, but an extraordinary strategic opportunity here to get in and shape history.
I would say that my friend from Connecticut is exactly right. Both he and I have visited Lebanon recently, and the facts are that Hezbollah basically controls the government. A prime minister who is not Hezbollah but was put into power by Hezbollah, and their country is basically gridlocked as well. If Syria goes, Bashar Assad goes, that connection between Iran and Hezbollah will be severed. The people of Lebanon will have a great opportunity to have once was a very thriving democracy restored. You know, I just finally I would like to mention to my friend, one of the things that surprised me from time to time as I've traveled to places like Burma, who were recently free, when I met 3 men who were in prison, one for 18 years and the other for 22 years. And when I've been to Libya, as I was at the elections the other day, and even when I've been in Egypt and met some of the young people who made the revolution, and we were in Tunisia and we met the young people there and the new government there, much to my surprise, to some degree, they pay attention to what we say. They pay attention. These 3 men that were in prison for over 20 years said, "Thank you for what you said. We listened to you in prison." The people in Libya on election night were waving little Libyan flags and saying, "Thank you. Thank you, America. Thank you. Thank you, Senator McCain, for saying." The people in Syria are listening and will find out what we're saying today here on the floor of the United States Senate. And does it matter much? I don't know. But if the people in Syria know that there are some of us who are committed and will not rest until this massacre stops and this terrible atrocities cease, that we will continue to do everything we can to see that we provide them with the kind of moral assistance which is a vital ingredient in continuing their resistance, and the material assistance which provides them with the wherewithal to gain their freedom.
I thank you, Senator McCain. I just want to make clear as we finish what we're talking about. What are we asking our government to do? We're not asking our government to put American troops on the ground in Syria. They don't need American troops. They've got fierce, patriotic fighters. What they need, first from us, is an open declaration that we're on the side of the Syrian opposition. The second is that I believe they need us to organize a coalition of the willing, just as you said. President Clinton did it in the case of Kosovo without the United Nations support. And again, it was a Russian veto that stood in the way.
And President Clinton said his greatest regret was that we did not intervene in Rwanda, where some 800,000 people were massacred.
Absolutely. And so we've got to learn from those lessons of history. There's a coalition of the willing waiting to be formed here if only we in the U.S. will show the leadership. Nobody's asking us, you and I are not asking for unilateral American action. There's no question that we have allies in the Arab world who are already involved in supporting the opposition in Syria, namely Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who would join us. I believe there may be one or more European countries that would join us. There are other Arab countries that would join us. And what are we asking? Let's increase the flow of weapons and training to the opposition. I think it's time for us to use American air power at least to impose a no-fly zone over Syria, because the Syrians are now using gunships, and I fear that they'll begin to use fighters to attack their civilian population and create and spread the kind of fear that they now depend upon. So it's a coalition in support of the opposition. It's weapons and training. It's sanctuaries where they can be trained and equipped. And it's the use of air power against this regime, which I think will not only deal a devastating blow to the regime, but will make the remaining supporters it has in the military and in the business community despair and see that the end really is near and abandon Assad. Have I stated correctly what the senator from Arizona feels that we want this government of ours to be doing now in regard to Syria?
I think the senator is exactly right, described it well. And there is an element also that adds, again, more urgency, which I know the senator from Connecticut is very well aware of. And that is published media reports talk about the fact that the weapons of mass destruction of apparently that Bashar Assad has significant stocks of have been moved around. Now, for what purpose those weapons have been moved around is not known. But it is not an unbelievable scenario that in final desperation, Bashar Assad would behave as his father did, and that is use these chemical weapons and slaughter unknown numbers of people. Again, that information lends urgency to bringing him down, to having it happen as quickly as possible, and that, of course, means the kind of engagement that the senator from Connecticut just described.
I think, my friend, I feel disappointed that we continue to have to return to the floor to make these pleas. I hope that we come to a day soon when we can come to the floor to celebrate the victory of freedom and the defeat of Assad, the dictator. May it happen soon.